This video is brought to you by viewers like you. Thank you. Be sure to subscribe and help get this video to 2,000 likes. Patrons who join my $10 tier can pick which shows I cover on It's Just a Cartoon. There's a limited number of slots available, so sign up now. SpongeBob goes to Patrick's house to find his friend having a meltdown. He attempts to console the starfish, only to be berated and screamed at. Patrick explains his parents are coming to visit. He worries they don't respect him due to his ungodly stupidity. Being a good friend, SpongeBob says he'll pretend to be insane around the star parents so Patrick can look like a genius by comparison. The next day, Patrick's parents show up and immediately start condescending him before he even does anything stupid.
That's for Patrick!
SpongeBob goes full Sean Penn, perplexing Patrick's parents with his performance as a pea-brained patsy. Patrick takes things a step too far by degrading, humiliating, and emasculating SpongeBob in front of his family. Fed up with Patrick's crap, SpongeBob tells him to take it down a notch. Turns out, Patrick has gone full Jared Leto and turned into a self-obsessed asshole. SpongeBob reminds Patrick he's only pretending to be dumb and decides to expose their ruse. He tries talking to Patrick's parents, only to find out they're even dumber than their son. SpongeBob tries to prove he's smart by showing them a picture of his brain, which is the first stupid thing he's actually done since sponges don't have brains. The Star family continues to taunt the poor sponge, driving him to the brink of insanity. But I guess none of that matters since Patrick's parents finally respect him.
Who are you people?
What?
They've been standing outside my house saying, "Where's Patrick?" all day.
What?
Oh, that's right, honey. We don't have a son.
Oh, yeah.
What? What?
Dumbest fucking ending ever. So remember, kids, if your friend asks you to help impress their parents, tell them hell no, because your friend will probably turn against you, and you'll just end up being the butt of everyone's jokes. No matter how hard you try to hold it together, you will go crazy and end up punching a hole through someone's wall. And if your parents come to visit, for the love of God, make sure they're actually your parents. Because though it may seem like they know who you are and even refer to you by name, they may turn out to be knuckle-headed imposters who don't even remember who their kids are. And even though Patrick is a bad son and a terrible friend, there's no point in getting upset. Because at the end of the day, it's just a cartoon. Jimmy, Sheen, and Carl are using gold they stole from their families to power their new hover helmets. Sheen spots a beehive, fucks around, and quickly finds out. Lucky for Sheen, Jimmy has a custom poison spray specifically for killing bees. Huh. So I guess that's what happened to all the bees. The helmets quickly burn through all the gold, rendering them useless. Instead of redesigning the helmets to run on a less expensive fuel source, Jimmy suggests they all get jobs. The trio head to McSpanky's where we're introduced to Skeet, the greatest man who ever lived. Jimmy fails to pass Skeet's vibe check, as he's able to see with his third eye that Jimmy's big brain attitude will not serve him well in the food industry. Carl and Sheen adapt well to their new roles, while Jimmy struggles as a cashier. He refuses to use the cash register while taking orders as he's able to do the tax in his head, even though the register keeps track of all the orders for business records. He also refuses to use the McSpanky's slogan and refers to table salt as sodium chloride, like an asshole. After being demoted to mascot duty, Jimmy tells off his boss, claiming he can do a better job than him and then leaves his shift several hours early. That night, Jimmy breaks into McSpanky's and turns the place into a fully automated operation, making all of his friends' jobs redundant. So he had enough resources to completely renovate the restaurant, but still needed money to fix the hover helmets? Sure. Instead of firing Jimmy on the spot for restructuring a chain restaurant without corporate approval, Skeet allows Jimmy to run the restaurant the way he wants. The new McSpanky's is a hit, complete with its own HAL 9000 customer satisfaction analyzer. The restaurant is making buttloads of cash, which will mostly go to corporate since Jimmy and his crew are locked in at minimum wage salaries. Skeet is in the middle of giving Jimmy an undeserved apology when Mr. Neutron comes in to ruin the vibe for everyone. He complains how he'd rather be at Taco Shack, reducing customer satisfaction to 0. For some reason, Jimmy gave the restaurant the ability to fly, as it goes on a rampage destroying every restaurant in town, which might be for the best considering the themes of some of these places.
Hard left! We can still make it to the Big Pilgrim for a mild sandwich and a mocha-hatas.
After McSpanky's causes millions of dollars in property damage, Jimmy destroys the monster he created by tricking it into flying into the sun. However, the restaurant is commandeered by space pirates who now have access to Jimmy's advanced tech and set out to find Skeet. And the gold for hover helmets plot never gets brought up again. because after using all their profits to pay to fix the city, Jimmy was probably sued into the ground by McSpanky's corporation for turning one of their restaurants into a flying genocide machine. So remember, kids, if you're looking for a job in the food service industry, your intelligence and your ego are your least valuable assets. Don't spend your whole shift trying to prove you're smarter than everybody when you're the one who agreed to sell your freedom for $8 an hour. Make sure to log all purchases correctly and do what your boss says without being a whiny passive-aggressive taint. If you get overwhelmed by your job, it's better to quit than try to one-up a greasy-faced man who will completely forget your name the moment you leave the building. Don't go behind your boss's back trying to make the workplace better. Everybody knows you're already better than the dumbass with weird eyebrows who will inevitably run his business into the ground. And if you end up building the restaurant of the future, for the love of God, make sure it isn't capable of committing mass murder. And even though Jimmy Neutron is an egomaniac responsible for every major disaster he's ever faced, there's no point in getting upset, because at the end of the day, it's just a cartoon. Hacker has stolen the Crystal of Calamore, which gives him unlimited power-ups, allowing him to rain hell over cyberspace.
Today I'll create chaos. Here. Tomorrow I'll plunder. There.
Someone want to tell him that's a blank wall? With this new energy source, he'll no longer be banished to the northern frontier, even though he's previously been able to come and go whenever he damn well pleases. Digit and the Cyber Squad hatch a plan to steal back the crystal, thanks to the world's most conveniently placed flyer. Even in 2002, targeted marketing was on point. The squad gets Hacker to see the flyer by faxing it to him, of all things. The Hacker heads to the spa, but not before locking up the crystal behind a force field.
Choose a switch. Choose a lever. Choose a button.
Red, green, purple. Got it. Matt and Jackie sneak onto the Grim Reaker while Inez and Digit distract Hacker at the spa. Instead of just posing as one stylist for all 5 of Hacker's treatments, Digit decides to pose as 5 different stylists. Because if there's one thing Gilbert Gottfried is known for, it's his wide variety of completely different sounding characters. Thankfully, Hacker is dumber than a bag of dicks and doesn't see through any of Digit's shitty disguises. That is, until the owner throws out all of Digit's reference photos for no goddamn reason. Back at the ship, Matt and Jackie get trapped in a dungeon-themed escape room. Digit explains they need to match the right knob with the right key to get out. They realize there's 9 different combinations, yet still take 8 tries before getting the right combo. The two head back to the main deck where they're greeted by Inez's suspiciously long arm. The trio trap Buzz and Delete while trying to free the crystal. Instead of just breaking the control panel to turn off the force field, the kids try to crack the code.
Choose a switch, choose a lever, and choose a button!
Jesus Christ. Buzz, keep your husband in check. The kids figure out there's 12 different combos. They go through all 12 only to find that none of them work.
You'll never find the hidden button!
This motherfucker. The kids discover a hidden button on the control panel and deduce the code is red, yellow, brown, which is absolutely 100% not the code Hacker plugged in earlier. But fuck it, it's not like child me would notice this and then be bitter about it for 20 years. 20 years? Good God, this show's old. The kids free the crystal right as Buzz and Delete escape the trap.
Ass.
Hacker returns with Digit, but just when it seems like they're cornered, Matt tricks them into standing over the trap door. The Cyber Squad returns the crystal to Motherboard, while Hacker gets some time to admire his new do.
This girl is shaped like a BMW. Body made wrong. And your body is green, girl. Pop off.
PBS, where reading is fundamental. In the real world, Harry is looking for a job, as he doesn't believe his unicycle and didgeridoo skills will do him any favors. He gets hired at an Italian deli run by a woman who looks like she graduated from Oral Roberts. The deli is tomato-themed, so Harry hands out flyers dressed as a giant apple. He tries to attract more business by listing out all 120 different sandwich combos, which is good in theory until you realize how horrible that'd look on a 9x11 flyer. Believe me, I went to school for marketing copywriting, and rewatching this bit made me throw up in my mouth a little bit. Business is now booming, but they have to let Harry go as the owner just hired someone who can play the didgeridoo on a unicycle. The owner takes back her costume, leaving Harry in his bare-ass onesie. Also, the guy who plays Harry, his real name is Matthew. What the hell, man? Have some pride as a Matt. So remember, kids, if your enemy takes something you want, the best way to distract them is with targeted advertisements. If you get trapped in their dungeon, hope they leave a convenient exit strategy under the floor mat. If you send someone to distract your opponent, make sure it's someone who can believably play multiple different characters. If the thing you want is stuck behind a force field, try destroying the force field's power source instead of wasting your time trying to figure out all the different combinations to a control panel that uses a completely different code than what was shown earlier. If by some chance your enemy catches you, hope that they're dumb enough to stand over their own trapdoor so you can make your escape. And if you're a grown man watching an educational show, resist the urge to yell at your TV when the characters take too long to figure out the obvious solution. It's the red switch, the green lever, and the purple button.
And the
red,
button.
green, purple. Red, green, purple. Red, green, purple. We get it, there's 9 different combos. I don't care what 3 times 3 is, just open the damn door. But even if you're smarter than a show made for grade schoolers, there's no point in trying to prove it to everyone. Because at the end of the day, it's just a cartoon. Max and Emmy head to Dragonland for a fun day at the beach. The dragons are gathering shells to make necklaces while Ord ogles over his cupcake like an unbridled pastry whore. Max graciously shares his hat with Ord, but when he asks for one tiny bite of the literal child-sized cupcake, Ord tells him to screw off. The group continues to look for shells, and Max gets one to squirt all over him.
Oh!
It's a sad, sad day when a 4-year-old has more riz than you. Ord finds a shell and offhandedly wishes for a hat in a completely natural-sounding way.
I wish I had a hat like Max's.
Surprise, surprise, it turns out Ord found a wish shell.
A wish shell? What's that?
What the fuck do you think it is? Ord is reluctant to share the wish shell, which is understandable considering how dumb his friend's wishes are.
I can wish for super big muscles.
You're 4. Calm down.
I can wish for a louder singing voice.
I'd wish for earplugs.
Microphones and earplugs can easily be purchased without wishes.
I want to wish for lots and lots of new books to read.
Do they not have libraries in Dragonland?
I'd wish to be the best soccer player in the whole world.
Firstly, the fact that you called it soccer, I don't care you're 6, your antepasados are rolling in their tumbas. Secondly, why did the rock make a squish sound when you kicked it?
World.
Ugh. Ord tells his friends to find their own damn magic shells and wishes to go someplace where he never has to share. Ord is transported to a magical sky McMansion, whose name I'm not sure I can say on YouTube.
Welcome, welcome. You've to Kingdom. Kingdom? What's that?
Ord is thrilled to be in paradise, until he learns he can never leave. Instead of thinking for 10 seconds, Ord panic wishes for all his friends to join him in the bad place.
You mean you could have made a wish to go back home, but no? Instead you wished us all here?
Oops.
Dumbass!
Ord tries to wish them all home, only to be told by Cassie the shell only grants 3 wishes, which is something she definitely could have mentioned when everyone was trying to use it earlier. The group tries to escape by flying out of the castle, only to get bitch-slapped by God. Monsignor Marmaduke explains the only way out is through a locked gate. Instead of trying to climb over the gate, the group takes a minute to shit on Ord for being a selfish prick, even though he had no ethical obligation to share the wishes, any more so than a lottery winner is obligated to share their winnings with fair-weather friends.
If you'd shared the wish shell in the first place, Ord, we definitely wouldn't be in this mess.
What are you complaining about? You and Max can go home anytime you want. The group plans to get the gate key from Marmaduke by strong-arming Ord into sharing his cupcake, which somehow hasn't gotten smushed in his weird-ass bottomless kangaroo pouch. Marmaduke agrees to the trade if he can have the entire cupcake to himself. Ord says hell no, until his friends remind him it's his own damn fault they got stuck there in the first place. Ord bitches and moans until he finally agrees to go halfsies on the cupcake. Marmaduke shares the key and Ord's dragon badge glows, signifying he's learned his lesson, even though he did the bare minimum to fix the mess he created and complained about it the entire time. The group escapes from Kingdom Come and flies past the smiling sun, which seems cute until you realize it's a sentient being that's always on fire. Back at the beach, we see Ord has finally learned how to share, and Max and Emmy return home to their parents, who somehow haven't figured out their kids keep disappearing from the playroom for several hours at a time. And don't give me that whole "it's just in their heads" crap, because that marshmallow fluff on Max's mouth definitely came from somewhere. At least I think it's marshmallow fluff.
It makes your wish come true.
You've to Kingdom. Kingdom. You cannot leave Kingdom. You can only to Kingdom. You cannot go home from Kingdom. That's why we call it Kingdom. We're in Kingdom, and you can only to Kingdom Come, and you can't go home from Kingdom Come. I'm really scared.
Stuck in Kingdom
You can come here.
There must be some way out of Kingdom Come.
Your first meal in Kingdom Come. Come on, everybody.
So remember, kids, sharing is important, and it's good to learn how to compromise with others. That being said, if you discover a magical wishing cell, keep it to your damn self. That way you don't have to worry about giving away wishes when you're the one who found it in the first place. Be sure to word your wishes carefully so you don't accidentally end up trapped in purgatory. But if your wish does backfire, take a second to plan your next move instead of panic wishing for the first thing that pops into your head. Make sure you know how many wishes you have ahead of time so you don't end up wasting them all. If you're trapped and the only way out is to share your snack with the gatekeeper, it's better to bite the bullet since your fat ass doesn't need more sweets anyway. And above all else, get yourself a man who will go down on you the way Marmaduke goes to town on that cupcake. Also, don't question how a two-headed dragon with one body can be two different genders when none of the dragons have any genitals. And if you're a grown man who makes YouTube videos, don't waste countless hours adding unnecessary bleeps to a kid show to make it sound more raunchy. Though in my defense, time is like my cum. I've got too much of it on my hands. And even though we'll never know who the previous owner of the dragon scale was and whether or not they died in Dragonland, it's best not to go down that rabbit hole. Because at the end of the day, it's just a cartoon. Maggie Pesky is kissing her parents' butts so she can see an R-rated movie about a fly-eating cyborg frog called the Flyinator. Come on, guys. The exterminator was right there. She points out her older brother Aldrin gets to see all the movies he wants. Her parents say she's not old enough to see R-rated movies, which makes sense because houseflies only live for about 4 weeks. Her parents tell her she can watch violent movies when she's older. They tell her to go see the Prancing Princess movie instead, much to her dismay, because there's nothing more degrading than watching something made for kids that you're clearly too old to be concerned about. Maggie says screw that nonsense and decides to see a violent samurai movie instead. She claims she's not breaking her parents' rule as she's technically older than she was that morning. She drags her best friend Raina along to sneak into 3 hardcore movies in a row, which would be impressive if the movies were longer than 5 seconds. Surprise, surprise, the two get caught by Aldrin, who managed to sneak into the Flyinator. Aldrin claims Maggie is too scared to see the movie by herself, damaging her fragile ego. Maggie bribes a pair of cockroaches to pose as her parents so she can get into the movie. Maggie once again forces Raina to join her, despite her obvious trauma. Raina runs out of the theater and rushes to the comfort of the Prancing Princess, proving there's nothing wrong with watching a kids' movie in the theater by yourself, unless it gives you a seizure. Unsurprisingly, it turns out Maggie's eyes are literally bigger than her stomach. She ends up getting scared by the Flyinator, which still looks better than the last 3 Terminator films. Maggie is barely holding it together as she returns home. It turns out Aldrin covered for her, so all she has to do is avoid spilling the beans. Unfortunately, Maggie can't go 30 seconds before tattling on herself and Aldrin. That's what you get for trusting your younger sibling to keep a secret. Her overly forgiving parents promise not to punish her, right before they scare the shit out of her. So remember, kids, if your parents tell you you're too young to see a movie, they're probably right. But if you watch it against their wishes, don't drag your best friend along because you might traumatize them for life. You shouldn't bribe strangers to pose as your parents, and don't watch a movie just because your older sibling dared you to. But if that same sibling covers for you, the last thing you want to do is sell them out to your parents. Also, don't question why bugs have their own version of Hollywood when it would make much more sense to just show human movies on a smaller screen. But most importantly, never deny the importance of animated media in a society that tells you it's only for kids. And even though Maggie Pesky is a literal bottom-feeding parasite, there's no point in getting upset, because at the end of the day, it's just a cartoon. 2 cat burglars are engaged in a high-speed chase through the middle of nowhere when they decide to pull a Fargo. The 2 are about to make their getaway when a mysterious figure sends a swarm of locusts to eat them alive. Courage watches the scene unfold as he racks his brain trying to figure out how a cartoon so awesomely violent was allowed to be shown to kids. The next morning, Courage digs up the cryptic artifact and takes it to his domesticating abusers.
Well, judging by the markings and the obvious age of the relic, I'd have to say it would be garbage!
Eustace dismisses the slab as garbage until he discovers it's a $1 million artifact from King Ramses' tomb. Eustace calls the newspaper to take out an ad, but never actually explains what the ad is for.
Nowhere news? I want to put an ad in the paper. Yes, sir. You start running that ad right away.
Just then, Professor Frith arrives to claim the slab while Courage acts out the weirdest game of charades. Instead of explaining how the slab is the legal property of the museum, the professor attempts to bribe the couple with a baller tote bag. Eustace tells him to piss off and lists off all the things he plans to spend the money on.
Fly swatter, spark plugs, shovel handle, razor blade, light bulb for the attic.
I'll give him this. He's a man of simple pleasures who knows how to make a fortune last. That night, the ghost of King Ramses shows up to... Holy fucking Christ! The ghost plans to unleash 3 plagues on the house unless they return the slab. Eustace, having balls of steel, tells the garish ghoul to fuck off. The first plague takes effect as the house gets flooded from the inside. That's not how snorkels work. Courage saves the house by opening the drain in the basement. King Ramses unleashes the second plague by playing the worst song ever on loop.
Crazy bus, riding on a crazy bus, riding up, riding down, driven by a funny clown.
Eustace still refuses to return the slab, so Ramses sends a swarm of locusts to devour their house. The swarm is halfway through demolishing their home when Eustace finally agrees to return the slab. The locusts dissipate, and Eustace instantly calls take backsies. He taunts the demonic king to his face and foolishly demands his $1 million. King Ramses has had enough of this shit and sends the locusts to give Eustace his just desserts. The next day, the slab is returned to King Ramses' tomb, and we see Eustace's soul is now trapped in the slab for eternity. Or at least until the next episode. So remember, kids, don't go around stealing cursed artifacts, no matter how valuable they may be. But if one should stumble into your lap, don't go around bragging about it, as you'll just attract unwanted attention. If an uncanny creature shows up demanding their stuff back, for the love of God, give it back. But if you're too bullheaded to listen to reason, don't rely on your dog to bail you out, as your dumbass will either drown or get devoured by a plague of demon bugs. And if you're the head of Warner Brothers Animation, don't include the scariest cartoon of all time as a bonus feature on the second best Scooby-Doo movie ever made. But no matter how bad this episode scarred you as a child, it's important to remember, it's just a cartoon. Dexter finishes tinkering with some random bullcrap when he hears the ice cream man outside and rushes to get his piggy bank.
That is not money.
Then why did you put them in the piggy bank? Dexter tries shaking down his parents for cash, because even though he can afford a bunch of fancy equipment, he somehow can't pay for a $2 popsicle out of his own pocket. Dexter finally scrounges up enough change just as the ice cream man drives off. Dee Dee shows up to rub salt in the wounds by taunting her little brother with her soggy fudge pop. Just then, all the quarters Dexter's dad made disappear suddenly fall out of the sky, pummeling Dexter to a pulp. Sure, why not? The next day, Dexter plans to catch the ice cream truck by teleporting outside with the money glued to his hands. Do pockets not exist in this world? Dexter tries to cut to the front of the line, because of course he does, when the ice cream man speeds off, abandoning dozens of potential customers. Dexter is now hell-bent on getting his ice cream. Instead of going to the store to buy some, he uses a giant magnet to catch the ice cream truck. He plans to place an order when the ice cream man pulls a Russian nesting doll on him. The following day, Dexter turns his entire street into a laser trap, which seems like it would have cost him way more than if he had just bought his own ice cream truck. His plan nearly works until his dumbass dad sets it off by mistake. Dead. Dexter reaches his breaking point and goes full Captain Ahab on the ice cream man. He harpoons the truck and somehow launches himself onto a mail van instead. Not sure how that happened, but okay. Dexter coerces the mailman into chasing down the ice cream truck, resulting in a high-speed chase that ends with the mailman plummeting off the side of a cliff. Damn it, Dexter, you can't keep replacing your parents and neighbors with clones every time they get killed by one of your batshit schemes. Dexter finally catches the ice cream man and demands to know why he won't serve him. The ice cream man explains how Dexter ruined his life after paying for a $16 ice cream with pennies.
Do you know how long it took me to count those pennies?
5 hours and 33 minutes?
Precisely.
Don't get me wrong, pennies are garbage currency, but that means the dude was taking 12 seconds to count each penny. Turns out, this led him on a downward spiral, as he ended up breaking his tooth, leading him to lose his girlfriend, apartment, and even his car. Dexter apologizes, and the guy finally gives him his ice cream.
$1.50, please.
You got change for 100?
Fuck off, Cheap Pete did it first.
You got change for 100?
So remember, kids, if the ice cream man is in your neighborhood, make sure you have cash on hand so you don't have to shake down your parents for pocket change. If you miss the truck, Don't spend all your time coming up with harebrained schemes to track it down when, let's be honest, most of the ice cream they sell isn't good to begin with. And don't get me wrong, I love a good SpongeBob Pop as much as the next guy born in the mid-90s, but don't put other people in danger chasing after ice cream you could easily get at the dollar store for less money. And once you finally do get your ice cream, don't pay for it in a super annoying way, as it's best not to piss off the guy who not only handles your food, but also knows where you live. And if you're a food service worker, it's important to remember that petty revenge is fun in small doses, but there's no point in taking out a vendetta against one customer, no matter how much of a psychopath they are. And don't bother wondering why an American family has a child with a terrible French accent, because at the end of the day, it's just a cartoon. The Powerpuff Girls wake up to find their room is flooded with toys. The girls go into a full-out frenzy, which results in them smashing their own window. The girls go to thank the professor, only to find he's dead-ass asleep.
Protons. Quantum physics.
It's not the weirdest sex dream I've heard of. The girls go back to playing when they get a call from the mayor to investigate a robbery, which somehow annoys them even though it's literally their job. The girls fly to a store that just got robbed, which ends up being a toy store. Surprise, surprise, it turns out all the girls' toys were stolen from the store. Instead of telling the cops the truth, the girls decide to keep the toys for themselves. The terrible trio are perplexed by the professor's apparent crime spree and go to confront him in the middle of the night. The girls discover the professor is sleepwalking and apparently unaware of his nighttime thievery. The Power Pains take advantage of the professor's condition and use him as an unwilling patsy to get all the toys they want. The cynical sisters goad their unconscious caregiver into robbing the same store night after night. The truant trio play coy as they hide their ill-gotten gains from their father, the mayor, and the poor toy store owner who they're directly bankrupting. The doughy-eyed dipshits briefly consider doing the right thing before laughing it off. You know, like all superheroes do. One night, the professor is in the middle of robbing the toy store, which somehow still hasn't beefed up its security, when he gets awoken from his trance. The next morning, the girls wake up to find no new toys and are straight up pissed. Instead of playing with the hundreds of toys they already have, the bratty babies decide to tail the professor to make sure he gets it right next time. You know, because they're the good guys. The girls follow the professor to the toy store, only to get ambushed by the mayor and every cop in the city. The professor takes the mayor hostage, resulting in an epic shootout that proves just how awesome this show is.
Yo, hopped out the whip, pop the heater out the club, eat ski masked it up, about to jack these fools lovely.
The professor gets blown to hell and the girls finally admit it was their fault. But what's this? It turns out the whole thing was just a prank to teach the girls a lesson about lying and stealing, which seems cute until you realize how many man-hours and tax dollars were wasted on this glorified slap on the wrist. The girls decide to give back the toys, which the mayor eagerly accepts.
I've always wanted a beefy Betty.
TMI, Mr. Mayor. Too much information.
So remember, kids, lying and stealing is wrong, but you know what's worse? Manipulating someone who doesn't have full autonomy of their body to do your dirty work for you. Don't take advantage of other people's medical conditions to get free shit, since you'll probably get tired of playing with all of it after a week. If you're a superhero whose sole job is to protect the city, don't lie to those depending on you to keep them safe when you're the one actively making things worse. And even though petty theft from bigger corporations is largely inconsequential, grand theft from local shops is the quickest way to bankrupt an independently owned business. And while the Powerpuff Girls aren't nearly as bad as DW, it's important to remember that we all have our bad days. And even if you think the 2016 reboot makes this episode look like a masterpiece, it's best not to go off on that tangent, because at the end of the day, it's just a cartoon. Stimpy is watching Horse and Fish, a show he loves so much he's able to recite every line from memory. Ren is fed up with Stimpy's TV habits and calls him out, which somehow feels like a personal attack against me. Later that night, Ren returns home from work to find Stimpy still glued to the TV and yells at him to make dinner. Stimpy turns to a show about a chicken torturing itself to death and ends up setting the whole living room on fire. The fire department shows up, only to get transfixed by a show on firefighters.
That's funny.
Ren is more upset that the firemen are eating his dinner than the fact that the house is on fire. The next day, Ren tries to wean Stimpy off TV by forcing him to play outside. When that doesn't work, Ren results to burying the TV before destroying it completely. This causes Stimpy to have a tantrum worthy of 1,000 DWs. And maybe it's because I didn't grow up with this show, but I'm starting to get why parents didn't like this cartoon. Later that night, Stimpy appears to behave himself until he excuses himself to the bathroom. Ren walks in on Stimpy enjoying himself, only to find he's OD'd. Instead of taking Stimpy to a hospital, Ren decides the best solution is to lock him in the basement until he's fully detoxed. Stimpy is left to wallow in his own misery until he goes through what I can only describe as the most accurate depiction of withdrawal since the movie Brain Damage. A whole year has passed, and Stimpy is finally let out of the basement. Things seem to be back to normal until Ren leaves for work. Okay, this show's starting to grow on me. So remember, kids, cartoons are good in moderation, but you shouldn't dedicate all your time to them, unless you make that your job. It's important to go outside every once in a while, as you can make friends with people who love TV just as much as you do. Don't try to sneak TV behind your friend's back, as they'll just end up destroying the thing you care most about, which will cause you to freak out until you hit rock bottom. And if you or someone you care about has an unhealthy obsession, don't take it upon yourself to make them better when there are countless professionals and medical experts to better take care of the situation. Otherwise, your friend will just replace one addiction for another, sending them on an endless downward spiral. And even though the show's creator is literal human garbage, it's best not to compare the people who like the show to the monster who created it, because at the end of the day, it's just a cartoon. Sagwa is leading a group of kittens back to the palace when her older brother Dongwa pulls a sneak attack.
I am an eagle, and I'm gonna catch one of your chicks!
Why does that voice sound familiar? The kittens continue to play until Dongwa's dumbass runs headfirst into a barrel. Dongwa is now bedridden with a sprained paw, and Sagwa feels absolutely horrible about it.
If I hadn't moved out of the way, you wouldn't have crashed into the barrel.
That's true.
Dongwa takes full advantage of his sister's guilt by making her his personal servant. The next morning, Dongwa's paw is fully healed. Instead of telling everyone the truth, Dongwa decides to milk his injury for as long as possible. He tells Sagwa he won't be able to help her with their weekly chores, which is bad enough, but why the hell are cats doing human chores? That afternoon, Sagwa and her bat friend Fufu go to check on Dongwa when they catch him doing Tai Chi. The fuck? Are these super cats? Sagwa realizes her brother has been faking his injury and decides to teach him a lesson. The two tell him about the arrival of a grand ship, and Dongwa stupidly runs to ask his mom if they can go. Dongwa's ruse is exposed, and his mom punishes him by making him do the rest of the chores himself. And again, why are the house pets doing people jobs? Also, there's a subplot about Sensei Topham Hat running his advisor ragged with endless rule decrees and mind-numbing chores. And I mean, I would feel bad for the advisor, but that's literally his job. Still, the magistrate goes out of his way to compliment the advisor on his work ethic and rewards him for his hard work, making him nicer than 90% of the bosses I've ever had, including myself. Dongwa realizes he's been a horrible older brother and apologizes to Sagwa. She helps him finish the chores, and the two go to see the boat together.
It's only a model.
If there's ever anything I can do for you, just name it.
I swear, I've heard that voice before somewhere.
It's not my fault if you made a plane that can't fly.
Wait a goddamn minute.
All this attention is great!
It can't be.
So, how's the paw today?
But that would mean...
Let's see who can tell the scariest story.
But what about...
Do I seem old to you? Are you having cake?
Oh my god. Let's review. Cat DW injured himself and milked his pain and suffering for all it was worth. He guilt-tripped his younger sister Fern into doing all his chores and waiting on him paw and foot. When his leg healed, he pretended to still be hurt to get more attention from his father, Nigel Catburn. When Fern caught on to her brother's scheme, she tricked him into stupidly exposing himself to their mother, Bitsy Baxter. And it was only after his punishment that he realized he was being a horrible sibling and apologized for lying to everyone. F you, Cat DW. Is there a cartoon you want me to talk about? Patrons who join my $10 tier can pick which shows I cover on It's Just a Cartoon. There's a limited number of slots available, so sign up now.
And I say, hey, what a wonderful kind of day. If you could learn to work and play and get along with each other. You got to listen to your heart.